in so many different ways. Jeremiah chapter 35, starting in verse 1. This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord during the reign of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah. The Lord said, "Go to the Rechabite family and invite them to come to one of the side rooms of the house of the Lord and give them wine to drink." What's the house of the Lord? The temple. Invite them to the side room of the house of the Lord and give them wine to drink. Jeremiah says, "So I went to get the son of Jeremiah, the son of Habazziniah, and his brothers, and all his sons, the whole family of the Rechabites." So at least all of the men in this tribe, in this clan. "I brought them into the house of the Lord, into the room of the sons of Hanan, son of Igdaliah, the man of God. It was next to the room of the officials, which was over that of Maaseiah, son of Shalem, the doorkeeper. Then I set bowls full of wine and some cups before the men of the Rechabite family and said to them, 'Drink some wine.'" Okay, so one of the things that I love to do growing up, now with TV, and we've seen, like things like the Passion of the Christ, where the Word of God begins to come alive, and I realize I've been reading these accounts, right? They're not stories, they're accounts. They really happen. But I'm not really imagining what it's like to be there. And so this is an exercise that I try to go through. So what did we just see? What did we just read? Here we have Jeremiah, who is known as the prophet of God in this time. He has that authority. People recognize it. He was here in the time of Ahab. Ahab didn't care for him at all. But the nation of Israel, even though they may have scorned him, they recognized that he had authority. And so God tells him, "I want you to get this clan of people, the Rechabites, and I want you to invite them and do something, offer them wine." And so he says to do it in a very specific way. Do it in the temple. So there's a room to the side of the temple. And then he sets up this table, and he puts these ornate bowls full of wine and these goblets. What is all this doing? Well, if I were a member of the Rechabite family and I was given a summons by the authority, the spiritual authority of the nation that I live in, and I go to the spiritual seat of authority in the temple, and this thing is laid out in front of me, what are all those things? They're communicating to me, this is authority. This is God. This thing that I'm having you come do, this is important. So they would have been just kind of overawed by all of these, the summons, and then all of this thing that's laid out in the temple. There's honor and authority associated with that. So what happened when he offered them the wine? It says in verse 6, "They replied, 'We do not drink wine, because our forefather Jonadab, son of Rechab, gave us this command.'" Andrew's teetotaler. He's going to start preaching against the booze. Look out. "Neither you nor your descendants must ever drink wine," their forefather told them. "Also, you must never build houses, sow seed, or plant vineyards. You must never have any of these things, but must always live in tents. Then you will live a long time in the land where you are nomads." He said, "We have obeyed everything our forefather Jonadab, son of Rechab, commanded us. Neither we, nor our wives, nor our sons and daughters have ever drunk wine. We've never built houses to live in, or had vineyards, fields, or crops. We have lived in tents and have fully obeyed everything our forefather Jonadab commanded us. But when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, invaded this land, we said, 'Come, we must go to Jerusalem to escape the Babylonian and Aramaean armies.' So we have remained in Jerusalem." The name of this message is "A Man to Stand Before Me." So who are the Rechabites? What's up with this? We know the time of, this is well into the founding of the nation of Israel now. And what happened when they were brought in? God told them, "I'm going to give you this land. I'm going to give you houses that you didn't build. I'm going to give you orchards that you're going to take fruit from that you never planted." And we know that the identity of the inheritance of the Israelites is the land. We know that every tribe, every family, except for the Levites, was given land. It's extremely important. And yet we have this account where Jeremiah calls this family in and they say, "We can't drink what you're giving us," number one. And number two, our forefather, the patriarch, told us not only can we not drink wine, we can't own land. We can't live in houses or build them. We can't plant vineyards. We have to stay as nomads. The Israelites had spent 40 years in the wilderness being punished, living as nomads in a tent. God would tell them, stay here for a few days, a few weeks, and then they would have to pick up and move. And here, these people are still doing that when the Israelites have already been given their inheritance. That's difficult. That's difficult. The Rechabites are referred to in the Bible really kind of almost all the way back to the beginning. They're descendants of a line called the Kenites. And the Kenites are tied to the descendants of Moses' father-in-law, Jethro. And we know that Jethro was not an Israelite. So we know that the Kenites, the Rechabites, were not Israelites. This is an alien tribe, foreign tribe that had been in Jerusalem living nomadically. So who is Jonadab then? Who was this patriarch, this forefather that they were talking about? Let's go to 2 Kings chapter 10. I'm going to start about verse 15. So this account in the Kings is the king at this exact point in this chapter is Jehu. Anybody know anything about Jehu? I call Jehu one of God's killers. This guy killed a lot of people immediately after being anointed. Before this time, Ahab, the king, had just, Elijah was the prophet during Jehu's lifetime. And of course, Ahab and Jezebel had done horrible, horrible things. And so God began to deal with the line of Ahab. First, Ahab died in battle. He had a couple of sons that reigned for short periods of time. And in the meantime, Elijah had been commanded to anoint 3 people. To anoint Elisha as the next prophet, to anoint a foreigner to be king of his land called Hazael, this king. And then the third one was to anoint Jehu to be king of Israel. And so after a while, Elijah carried out those commands. Elisha actually did the other 2 anointings of Hazael, the foreign king, and Jehu. He actually sent another priest, another prophet, to do that for him. And as soon as Jehu was anointed king, the killing starts. I mean, he starts wiping out. So he was commanded to wipe out all of Ahab's sons and his wife. And it's anybody that could carry on the line. Jezebel, the queen, was still alive when Jehu became anointed, and that's one of the first people that he had killed. He had the descendants of Ahab were over 100, and he had them killed one way or another. So this is a guy who's passionate about following the instructions. And so we're going to come in at verse 15. He had just finished wiping out basically the last of Ahab's descendants. And it says, after he left there, he came upon Jehonadab, son of Rechab, who was on his way to meet him. So this is the Jonadab now that his descendants were talking about that Jeremiah offered the wine to. He's in his chariot, Jehu is, going from one slaughter to the next slaughter now. He's killed all of Ahab's descendants, and he's getting ready to go and wipe out all of the priests and prophets of Baal. He's on the road between these 2 cities, and here God sends Jehonadab and meets him on the road. Jehu greeted him and said, "Are you in accord with me as I am with you?" In the King James, let's see if I can pull it up. It says, "Is your heart toward me as my heart is toward you?" "I am," Jehonadab answered. "If so," said Jehu, "give me your hand." So he did, and Jehu helped him up into the chariot. Jehu said, "Come with me and see my zeal for the Lord." Then he had him ride along in his chariot. What happened there when he said to him, "Are you in accord with me as I am with you?" That was a covenant. It doesn't, we kind of just, read these things as stories and we scan over them. I'm sure there's a lot there that happened that we aren't being told. But this was a king now. This was a man who had been anointed king by the spiritual authority. And he meets this man and he knows that God has sent him to him. And he says, "Are you in accord with me?" he reaches out and he takes his hand. This is the mark of a covenant. We know that many times they would what's called cut covenant. They would cut hands and let their blood mingle. And this covenant was more important than life and death. Jehu probably still had the blood of Ahab's sons on him in this chariot as he's traveling. So this was a blood covenant. Jehu said, "Come with me and see my zeal for Yahweh." We need some men and women who are willing to show their zeal. You know, we spent the weekend here, my wife and I, and we stayed at a relative's house down in Queen Creek, and I'm driving through and I'm seeing all of the political signs, right? And if you're listening to the news, they're just saying how close these things are, and we know that Arizona is getting, it appears that there's a significant majority of people who want to make abortion a right up to the point of birth. We need some people who are going to show their zeal for the Lord. There's a price for that. There's danger in it. Sister Dahlia knows some things about that. Some of the things that she shared, that price. When I get up in the morning, I've come to the realization I have no business positioning myself to be anything except thankful. If you ever read like the accounts from current publications like Voice of the Martyrs, and you see the price that people in other nations are paying today to serve God, and you'll see pictures of them, and they're missing children, they're missing husbands, they're missing wives that have been killed, that have been martyred, that have been kidnapped, and there's smiles on their faces because they're serving God with joy, having paid prices that I can't imagine. I have no business waking up in the morning with anything other than a thankful heart, but we need that zeal. So what did Jehu do? It says, when Jehu came to Samaria, he killed all who were left there of Ahab's family. He destroyed them according to the word of the Lord spoken to Elijah. Then Jehu brought all the people together and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little, Jehu will serve him much. Now summon all the prophets of Baal, all his ministers and all his priests, see that no one is missing, because I'm going to hold a great sacrifice for Baal, and anyone who fails to come will no longer live. Well, this is Jehu who had just been anointed king of Israel and was wiping out the line of Ahab. It says here, but Jehu was acting deceptively in order to destroy the ministers of Baal. So here we go. We got the George Patton, the General Patton, right, of of Israel at this time. This guy knows military tactics, and he is. There is nothing that's off limits for him. He's not playing nice. He's going to use every dirty trick in the book. Jehu said, call an assembly in honor of Baal. So they proclaimed it. Then he sent word throughout Israel, and all the ministers of Baal came. Not one stayed away. So the trick worked, and the threat worked. He said, I've got this great thing that's going to happen, and anybody that's not here is going to be killed. So there's the carrot and the stick, right? Not one stayed away. They crowded into the temple of Baal until it was full from one end to the other. This is a massive temple, so we don't know how many hundreds or thousands were here. And Jehu said to the keeper of the wardrobe in the temple, bring robes for all the ministers of Baal. So he brought out robes for them. Why is he doing that? We have rules, when we're in war today. If Wilmer and I get drafted into the U.S. Army and we're sent overseas and there is an official battle, an official war that's been declared, are we wearing these clothes? No. We're wearing uniforms. Uniforms of the American Army. And the enemy is supposed to be wearing their uniforms as well. You know that we have rules of engagement that the overwhelming majority of the world has accepted that says if you're going to declare war and you are battling, you have to wear the uniform of the nation that you are serving. And because we have situations where people have another nation would send somebody to assassinate a leader or cause problems in that nation they're warring against. And what do? They'll have some of their soldiers put on the uniform of the enemy to be deceptive. In our nation we've done that. Even in my lifetime, there are some wars where people would do that. What happens if you're caught wearing the uniform of the enemy and they find out? The rules of engagement in this world say they can have you summarily executed right there. No trial, no nothing. You have no rights. You've given them up because you have falsely put on the uniform of another nation. Why is that so important? Because it's important to know who the enemy is. And one of the easiest ways to know who the enemy is you can tell they're wearing the uniform of the enemy. And so why is Jehu telling this official here, put these robes on all of these people who are priests and prophets of Baal? He wants to know who the enemy is. Right? So this man does this. They put them all on. So all of the priests and prophets of Baal, ministers of Baal, they all had now this same robe. Then Jehu and Jehonadab, the man that we were talking about, this patriarch, son of Rechab, went into the temple of Baal. And Jehu said to the ministers of Baal, look around and see that no servants of the Lord are here with you. No servants of Yahweh are here with you. Only ministers of Baal. So they went in to make sacrifices and burnt offerings. Okay, so the enemy has the uniform. Why would he tell them, look around and make sure there's no servants of Yahweh in here? And if there are, get them out. Well, we want to get rid of any innocent bystanders. We want to know who the enemy is, and we want to get rid of anybody that we know is for us. And why would there be people that are serving Yahweh in there? Well, again, we're not putting ourselves in the context, in this situation. This was a nation that the king and queen had handed their nation over to the worship of Baal. And God hated Baal worship, it seems like, more than he hated any other kind of idol worship, because Baal worship was known for sacrificing children to their God. And this was and is an abomination to God. We see the situations where the Israelites would do this, and then God would pour out such wrath and judgment on them. And I think about where we are today in the United States. Since 1973, we've killed almost 70 million of the only truly innocent that there are, those who have yet to be born. And I'm going, God, the blood of those Israelites that were slaughtered because you were pouring your wrath out on them, they couldn't have been killing that many children. It may have been just a few thousand a year. Their blood is crying out from the altar saying, why are you letting this nation prosper? Why have you not poured your wrath out on them 10 times what you poured your wrath out on us? The numbers of children that we have killed as a nation are so much higher than what they were doing at this time. But in that time, because we're experiencing some pressure like that already in the United States. People scorn God. They scorn Christianity. And so everybody in this room has felt some kind of pressure to, well, I'm not going to talk about that right now. Okay, well, I'm not going to make a big deal about this because there's going to be spite. There may be some kind of consequences. The pressure on the Israelites to worship Yahweh at this time of the nation would have been much, much higher. You would be paying a price if your neighbors hadn't seen you bow to the statue of Baal, to kiss it, to bring a sacrifice or an offering. There would have been great pressure on them. So there's 100 reasons why there might have been some Israelite worshipers of Yahweh, mixed in, and Jehu does not want to take any chance that those people are going to be killed. So he gets those removed. What does he do after that? They went outside where Jehu had posted 80 men outside of this great temple. He gave this 80 men, these soldiers that were his, a warning. He says, if one of you lets any of the men inside here that I am placing in your hands escape, it will be your life for his. What does that mean? He says, if I see that you let one of these guys escape, the guy who let him escape, he's dead. We'll kill him right now. So he was letting his men know how serious he was about what was about to happen. As soon as Jehu had finished making this burnt offering inside, he ordered the guards and officers, go in and kill them, let no one escape. So these 80 men went inside. They cut them down with the sword. The guards and officers threw the bodies out and then entered the inner shrine of the temple of Baal. I love this part. They brought the sacred stone out of the temple of Baal and burned it. They demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal, and people have used it for a latrine to this day. What's a latrine? It's not a nice toilet like you find in the mall or a restaurant, right? It's just an open air where people are just doing their business on it. What's all that? We don't see that because we don't see a lot of pagan and true idol worship in this nation. We don't run into it very much. when somebody has a God and they say, my God's greater than your God, they want to desecrate everything that's associated with this other person's God. And there are no gods except Yahweh. He is one. And you see that with the nation of Israel. Anytime they would go in, they would desecrate. You know, there's several verses in the Bible that talk bad about mocking. Don't sit with the mockers. Don't stand with them. Don't do those things. But there is a mocking that is sanctioned in the Word of God. And there's multiple passages in the Word of God where people are mocking these false idols, these prophets and these priests of this false God worship. Elijah mocked the prophets of Baal. David mocked prophets of false gods and made fun of them. And so this great temple that had caused so much child death, child murder, this temple that had supposedly brought such power and prosperity to Ahab and Jezebel and these priests who had exercising so much authority and power in the nation, wiped out, and that place is a filthy public restroom to this day. I'm thankful for that. We need that kind of zeal that says, I don't care what the world is telling me that I should believe into the religion of man, the religion that our schools are teaching our children from kindergarten on. There's a state religion that's being given and saying you need to believe that the biblical account of creation is not true, that the earth is billions of years old. You need to believe that a man can get pregnant, that a woman can be a man, and that we have to call them whatever we want. And there's a price if we don't agree to do that. When the master comes back, my dad says, on Judgment Day, you'll wish you'd been a fanatic for Jesus. We need that zeal. I appreciate you here at Miracle Life because I see that zeal. The prayer meetings, the services that we watch, the massive blessing that you guys have been on the mountain there in Williams as you come and you have prayer meetings and as we seek the face of God. Our little congregation, a lot of them are apprehensive about these supernatural things of God. We want to reach out and grab them, and I love that you guys are leading the way in those services. Okay, so he does what God tells him to do, and he says he wiped out Baal worship in Israel. However, Jehu did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. And this man, Jeroboam, had caused Israel to commit the worship of the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. So we know the worship of, for whatever reason, the worship of this calf idol that Aaron had done already right as they were going to come into the promised land. That's still going on. And for whatever reason, whether it was political or family or whatever, Jehu, although he wiped out all Baal worship at that time, he allowed this other thing to go on. So it's telling us, well, he did good, and then here's where he didn't. Even so, the Lord said to Jehu, because you have done well in accomplishing what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab all I had in mind to do, your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. So he tells Jehu, you're a king, and then 4 generations, your line is going to sit on the throne. Do you know that's the longest dynasty of Israelites on the throne? David's was 3, and no one else ruled that long. So because of Jehu's zeal, God rewarded him with that. Let's get back to Jonadab. So we see just that short little account there of what Jonadab did, how he covenanted with Jehu. But we know that from the account that even though good things happened in the land there for a short time, Jonadab still told his family, don't settle down. You have to continue to live in tents. How long was it between Jonadab and this account in Jeremiah 35 when Jeremiah called them in and offered them wine? Was it a couple years? Went through, did the math. It was about 280 years. That's 7 to 9 generations after the forefather Jonadab. And that 7th or 9th generation says, our patriarch commanded us to do this difficult thing, and we're still doing it. They affirm to the prophet of Yahweh, Jeremiah, we have been faithful, we have been obedient. It had to have been difficult. Anybody want to live in a tent right now? Your children, their peers, they're getting to see all of these things that they're enjoying. But we have to stay mobile. We have to stay walking, riding horses, not planting. Agriculture was extremely important back in that time, to have your own farmland, to have your own agriculture. And they didn't do that, and they didn't do that for over 280 years. They tell Jeremiah that. 35, verse 12. Then the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah, saying, This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Go and tell the men of Judah and the people of Jerusalem, will you not learn a lesson and obey my words? Jonadab, son of Rechab, ordered his sons not to drink wine, and this command has been kept. To this day they do not drink wine, because they obey their forefathers' command. But I, Yahweh, have spoken to the Israelites again and again, yet you have not obeyed me. Again and again I sent all my servants, the prophets, to you. They said, Each of you must turn from your wicked ways and reform your actions. Do not follow other gods to serve them. Then you will live in the land I have given to you and your fathers. But you have not paid attention or listened to me. The descendants of Jonadab, son of Rechab, have carried out the command their forefather gave them, but these people have not obeyed me. Therefore, this is what the Lord God Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Listen, I am going to bring on Judah and on everyone living in Jerusalem every disaster I pronounced against them. I spoke to them, but they did not listen. I called to them, but they did not answer. So, again, this is chapter 35, and in almost every chapter, God, Yahweh, has been telling Jeremiah, tell the Israelites they're doing wrong this way. Now try it this way. Now try it this way. This chapter is a 280-year object lesson as one more way to reach out to the Israelites and say, do what I've commanded you. Do what I've told you. Look at these people. They did what their patriarch told them to do, and their patriarch is not me. He's not Yahweh. And they were faithful. By the 9th generation, they couldn't imagine what Jonadab looks like. They don't know his words. All they've done is pass down this set of commands, and they've been faithful. Then Jeremiah said to the family of the Rechabites, This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. You have obeyed the command of your forefather Jonadab, and have followed all his instructions, and have done everything he ordered. Therefore, this is what Yahweh Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Jonadab, son of Rechab, will never fail to have a man to serve me. What does that mean? It means several things right off the top. Number one, it means that his line is still alive today. And we know that there's, I have relatives, I have people that I know the line's going to end with them. They have no sons, right? Many of them don't have sons or daughters. It just dies out. We know that because of what Yahweh said to them, that there are still people who can trace their lineage back to Jonadab, back to the Rechabite clan today. What else? We'll never fail to have a son of Rechab to serve me. What else does that mean? That means that today there are people of this line that are still serving the God of the Israelites. Now, there's not a whole lot of people younger than me here, so most of you are the choir. As I'm getting older, legacy is starting to become so much more urgent and important to me than it was. I'm a builder, and my sons, as they were growing up, I had them work with me. Both of them are older and now well out of the house. But one day we had just basically finished building a house, and one of my sons was with me. We were driving away, and I said, we did a good job. It's a nice house. The owners are happy with us. I said, 50 years from now, their kids might remember who built it. More than likely they won't. The grandkids sure won't, if they still have the house. But I said, you know what? In 5 years, we could drive back in this neighborhood, and no one's going to know that we did this. No one's going to know that we built the house. It was a good thing that we did. It's honest work. There's nothing wrong with it. But that's not the legacy. Nobody's going to care who built the house. Those things aren't what go beyond us after we're gone. And it started to, it started to become clearer and clearer to me that in addition to working with my hands, there needs to be things that are going to go way past me. And some people look at that and they go, well, it's family. As long as my line continues. And that's an example of that in this account here in Jeremiah. God rewarded them, saying, you're always going to have somebody in the line of Jonadab. What an amazing blessing that is, Jehu was only given 4 generations on the throne, and here is a blessing that is forever. That means when Yeshua returns, there will still be descendants of Jonadab on the earth, and there will still be descendants of Jonadab who are serving God when he returns. That's legacy, right? And I appreciate what Pastor Massaro and Pastor Dahlia are doing and the work that they've done. 30 years. It's hot down here. I'm looking forward to getting back up. They've been laboring in the desert. My parents have labored in the desert. They've been faithful. There's going to be a legacy, certainly in the family line, but in the spiritual family line, there's going to be a legacy that is going to go on. And we are all given that promise. We can all attain that blessing. Why am I saying that today? I'm going to wrap it up.